Independent media is the future. And I know that many of you who watch this show and listen to this show, you've lost a lot of faith in traditional news media, whether it's conservative, liberal, independent, other, it doesn't matter. Uh, and so that's why I believe independent media is the future. We can talk about things that other corporate media entities can't. And so when I started this show a year ago, I realized it would require people with a backbone backing us. And if we're going to find people like that to have the courage to come forward and help people like me stay independent, then we should do everything that we can to give those people a platform and a voice to help spread their message. Because if independent media is the future, so too are the people who support independent media, like me. Like, I don't have a show without great people, like the gentleman I'm about to introduce you to. His name is Jonathan Rose. He's the CEO of Genesis Gold Group. And I want to introduce him to you today so he can not just tell you a little bit about himself, but tell you about the company, and why investing in gold and silver is critically important in this very tumultuous time. So without further ado, let's bring Jonathan Rose on. Do we have him? Hey, Jonathan, welcome, my friend.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So your Genesis Gold Group, first of all, I really appreciate everything you do for this show, and for independent media. It's so important that not only do you support independent media, but you recognize it as really a pathway forward. And one of the things that, like, I mean, lots of things that impress me about Genesis Gold Group, but like these prepper bars, I think I've never seen it done before. And so much of our audience, Jonathan, I mean, they recognize that we live in very turbulent times, very divided times, and they're doing everything that they can to prepare themselves in a litany of different ways for anything that life has to throw at them. But this is the first time that I've ever seen anything like this with gold or silver and these prepper bars. Like, it can be like these perforated. This is silver, obviously, but they're perforated, and you can break them off, snap them off into manageable chunks. And I just think this is really cool. It's not food or water, but it's wealth protection. So I got to ask, like, how did you come up with this?
Yeah. So actually, I have its evil twin here, the gold version. You can see this. But yeah, these are perforated gold sheets. The only bar of its type that's made in America, actually minted in the USA. I call it wealth in your wallet. I keep this in my wallet. Now you've had me searching for my wallet just to kind of show people how it kind of slots. I'm trying to get this on slots in here and can pull it out. But, very quickly, so I used to work for Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, worked on the London Metal Exchange. So I've been in this financial sector, gosh, for over 30 years now. And obviously, fast forward to today, and I've actually consulted for some of the biggest banks, even in Southeast Asia, like explaining them how to offer gold to their financial advisors, setting up gold depositories for HSBC, training financial advisors in AIG and in Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia. I've kind of done it all, but I always kind of come back to my grassroots. And my grassroots is believing in a physical product that's tangible, which is obviously assets like gold and silver. Now, today, when people are looking at the economy, Sean, we are in uncharted waters. We have more problems today than we've ever had before. So, viewers may be watching and they're very educated to the fact that, we have this trade deficit. And I've been saying for the longest time that debt does matter. You can't keep printing money, accumulating debt, and not expect any ramifications at all financially or globally for the markets. So today we're in debt $34 trillion, which is a staggering number. And we kind of get numb to these numbers. But just to put it into a little bit more perspective, every 90 to 100 days, we're accumulating an additional $1 trillion, which is only the interest that we have to pay on the existing debt. So we're never even able to kill the existing debt because we're just paying $1 trillion in interest on that debt. And to kind of take that one step further, $1 trillion, that's more than our US national defense budget that we're spending annually. So we are spending $1 trillion every 90 days, which is our US national defense budget, and it's crippling the US dollar. And the Western dominance has really come to an end. And obviously, being a pivotal election year, the markets are trying to stay at that status quo. Neither party would really want to rock the boat and have a cataclysmic crash. However, it's definitely on the cards. And even Jerome Powell, head of the Federal Reserve, Sean, has said, red flags, alarm bells, we're going to have more regional bank failures this year. Why? Because of all the bad commercial loans these banks are holding on to. These big skyscrapers, they're empty, they're defaulting on loan payments. So again, you have bad national debt. We're heading off a fiscal cliff. We've got bad loans, and the banks are heading on by really a few threads. We've got threats of what we call central bank digital currencies, where we're heading towards a digital dollar, which, by the way, folks, is an extremely bad idea. And to put it simply, that's just a way to track people, how much you're spending, where you're spending, why you're spending. It's a form of control. We have BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, moving away from the US dollar, creating their own currency, backing it by physical metals. So people are seeing all of this, and they're thinking, what can I do to safeguard my retirement dollars? So kind of get back to your questions and kind of tie it all into the prepper bar. People are realizing that they can have assets like gold and silver that they hold on to, or take it one step further, which we'll talk about in a minute, I'm sure, is things like IRAs or 401ks, where you can put physical metals in there. But really, the prepper bar really was birthed because of this product here. This is a kilo of gold, and it's a really cool product. You put this in people's hands, and they're like, wow, this is heavy. But year after year, clients would say to us, Jonathan, I have this brick of gold or this brick of silver. I can't shave it off. I don't have a hacksaw in my back pocket. I can't cut it up into small pieces. How am I going to spend this? And spendability is something that's come up time and time again. So we wanted to make sure that we had a product for our clients, because we would listen to what they're asking for, something that's spendable, tradable, portable. And that's really how the prepper bar was born. And really what you're looking at here is something extremely innovative. I know the lights are kind of giving off a big shine here, probably because it's also gold as well. But what you'll see here is the top row is a 20th of an ounce pieces that you can break off like a Hershey bar, like a piece of chocolate. The middle row is a quarter of an ounce. The bottom row is a 10th of an ounce. So it's the only bar, like I mentioned, minted in America, that you can fit in your wallet. If things go south and cash is no longer available, or you don't have any cash, or your credit cards are useless, you can pull out this, like I mentioned, wealth in your wallet, or someone said to me the other day, it's like a wallet within your wallet. You can break off a piece of this if you're in a tight spot, in a pickle, you're trapped somewhere, and you could use it for barter, you can use it for trade. Now, when we first, came up with this idea, we manufactured these, I actually sent it to some of my preppers, or what I should say, more homesteaders, people that really live off the land. And they loved it. They thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I called them a couple of weeks later, and they said, can they get another one? I was like, what happened to it? And they'd already used it. I said, but how did you use it? And they just used it within the community with other farmers. So in terms
awesome.
of a
Jonathan, I mean, I live on a farm. I've got a homestead. I've got livestock. Like, I'm looking at behind this camera, I'm looking at a wall. Cause I've got 5 kids, and when you have kids and you have a family and you have land, you're always looking. It's about a legacy, right? It's about making sure your kids inherit something of value, real value. And our politicians on both sides of the aisle, and let's face it, I mean, I'm a conservative, but Republicans, I mean, we're $34 trillion in debt. The debt payments themselves are oppressive. To me, I think our debt is one of our greatest national security threats that we face as a country. Eventually, we're going to have to figure out a pathway out of this. And so I'm just like a middle-class guy, right? And, trying to make sure that if things do go south, like you said, that we have the ability to take care of our family, feed our family. But this stuff, like when you talk about bartering, like if you look at how much our fiat currency or the US dollar has declined since the 1970s in terms of value, it's staggering. But here you have gold, at least a couple of weeks ago, at an all-time high. So can you talk about how gold, and even to a certain extent silver, has not only held its value but increased over time?
Yeah, that's a good point. I always get miffed when people say to me, "Oh, gold and silver's a terrible investment," and I always scratch my head and say, "Why?" Because I have my trading chart here up on my screen. 5-year gold's up almost 70%, and the
Unbelievable.
same with silver. And really, it's a store of value. We came off of the gold standard in 1971, and this is when all the trouble began, when we went to free trade and we started printing money. When you look at the value of the US dollar, it's really lost over 97% of its purchasing power. What you could buy in the early 1920s with a dollar versus what you can today is obviously staggering, in terms of less, in terms of what you can purchase with consumer goods. This is where that word inflation comes from. It's very insidious because it's like a caterpillar on a leaf taking a small bite and a small bite. I always kind of tell a quick story that if we went back to the year 1920, and I don't have one in front of me, but just like a 1 ounce gold coin, in the year 1920, they were both worth the same. And you could go into a bank back then and you could slide over a $20 bill and they would give you back a $20 1 ounce coin. Now, today, that same 1 ounce gold coin is worth, looking at my chart, about over $2,400, and versus looking at the $20 bill today. So, the dollar's lost value decade after decade. The price of gold hasn't just remained a constant, it's gone up, and I think what we're about to see next, I think, $5,000 an ounce for gold is very conceivable. And I remember when I used to train financial advisors in Southeast Asia, and they used to say to me, "What do you think the price of gold will be?" This was in the early 2000s. I used to tell them, expect $2,000 an ounce for gold. And they used to laugh at me. I mean, everyone used to laugh, this guy. Too. And then it's like, look where we're at today. So, when you have these other digital assets that aren't backed by anything and can disappear in a bunch of zeros and ones, cryptocurrencies I'm talking about, they're artificially, propped up. You don't know what they are versus something tangible that you can feel. It's never going to be worth zero. So, gold is a solid investment. Excuse the pun there, right? But the point being, the point being is, a good financial advisor will recommend putting gold in your portfolio. And what we're seeing in this great nation is decline, recession, where political pundits are saying, "Oh, we're not in a recession. We're not in a recession." Well, why are companies like John Deere, one of the backbones of America, okay, been around since I think the 1860s, John Deere was established. They're now closing plants in Illinois. They're moving production to Mexico. They're laying off, people and family members that have worked for that plant for generations. And you're seeing big chain retailers file bankruptcy. You're seeing cities like San Francisco close down. We're not in a recession. Well, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And I believe next year we're going to see some seismic shifts in the marketplace. And when that happens, you want to make sure you have the flood insurance before the banks burst. So that's why I mentioned that if you have an IRA or 401k, you can put precious metals in an IRA. The market's been on a tear right now, and now's the time to kind of take those chips off the table. You can roll over an existing IRA or 401k tax-free, penalty-free, and you move it from over here. You do what we call a lateral trade. You're just moving it sideways, and you can put assets like this in there. It's your gold. Metals are held in a depository. You still get your statements. The only difference is, Sean, is you have physical, real assets backing up your portfolio, whilst the US dollar is under all this stress. We've got the stress of domestic issues. We've got the stress of international issues with war, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, the Middle East. It's a melting pot of problems right now. And really, what gold is technically, it's like an umbrella for a rainy day. You see storm ahead. You're going to take your brolly with you in your car. At least you do if you live in London, where I used to live. But today, gold and silver is an integral part of a balanced portfolio. What I recommend to people is to kind of get an education and understand what's about to happen and what your options are, because people do have options. And I believe once they understand what those options are, particularly when it pertains to gold and silver, that's where you're going to get the peace of mind, understanding the knowledge. And that's where you're going to arm yourself with what you need to know on how to protect your family's finances.
So, Jonathan, I mean, you're talking about, talking to, by the way, Jonathan Rose, who's the CEO of Genesis Gold Group. But I, the Roth IRA, like if say someone's retired, like my parents are retired, and maybe they don't understand how it works. I mean, obviously, I mean, you just said like, hey, just learning about it is the first step, and
Yeah.
Genesis Gold Group can help people learn about it, right? Like teach, coach, and mentor them along the
Yeah.
way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so you may have an IRA, a 401k, a TSP, a Roth IRA, like you mentioned. If you have a retirement account, you have options, and the chances are you can roll that over. So, a couple of things they can do. Number one, they can call us directly. We have an easy number to remember. It's 800-200-GOLD, 800-200-4653. But if they just go online to genesisgoldgroup.com, we actually have a free definitive gold guide. And this definitive gold guide will show them which coins and bars will give them a better return in the future. Get our wealth protection guide as well. It's going to cover a lot of these facts that I'm talking about. They'll also, qualify and be able to get a virtual seat at my monthly seminar that I'm going to be doing with Mike Lindell. So that's something that they may want to also tune in on. So I believe in getting an education. In the past, these financial advisors have thrown people into these products. And when I ask them, what are you in? They say, well, my IRA has stocks, it has bonds. And I say, well, what type of stocks, what type of bonds? And they really don't know. And I don't say that to embarrass them. I just kind of shed light on it to start, no, let's see what you have, because now's the time to understand what you're in, because these top economists are saying that these risky assets that you're currently holding, they're the ones that are going to drop in value and lose possibly up to 80% of their worth. So by getting an education, by getting a definitive gold guide, the wealth protection kit, learning from our free seminars, it's really the first step on the ladder to understanding how gold and silver can protect you. So again, they can go to genesisgoldgroup.com. They can get the free definitive gold guide there. I know you mentioned these, which I just think are just the coolest things out there. Again, the only divisible product that you can put in your wallet, or these actually are eligible for an IRA as well, Sean. So if you want to know how to put these in an IRA, when they go to genesisgoldgroup.com, they can do so. If you just want to purchase these directly, we have a website called prepperbar.com. Go to prepperbar.com, and actually on checkout, if they put in the promo code PREPPER, PREPPER, they'll get 10% off the silver and 5% off the gold for your viewers. So prepperbar.com if you want to take physical possession of these. If you want to learn how to put these in an IRA or even hold assets like this in your IRA along with coins, they can go to genesisgoldgroup.com, and we'll be more than happy to send them, the definitive gold guide, the wealth protection guide, and also they can, request to join our monthly webinar with myself and Mike Lindell.
Well, I mean, to the battle crew who's listening and watching, you should definitely do that. Jonathan, I've got a question for you. If you could wave a magic wand and you talk about if you were calling the shots and you had to help find a pathway out of this, what I see is like almost like an economic death spiral. I mean, to me, it's like if we continue on this path, the ship here in America is going to capsize. It's not a question of if, but when. I mean, obviously, it's some combination of cutting spending or at least keeping spending stable while simultaneously having pro-growth economic policies and growing the economy at an exponential rate. But how do we find our way out of this?
Gosh, that's a great question. I think I'd be in the White House. I mean, I think, when I look back, to a successful economy, I look back to like the Maggie Thatcher era, the Iron Lady who ruled, and even Ronald Reagan. Okay, but when you looked at Margaret Thatcher, she was a couple things. She was pro-military. She was the one that wanted to spend the most on the military and protecting our borders. And I've seen it firsthand what weak borders have done to the London and to the UK. You can't even recognize parts of London. It looks like you're in a Middle East country. It's literally that bad. You forget, like, oh my gosh, did I grow up here? This isn't the England that I once knew. So I think, locking down the borders is if it's not even too late. But that's something that I think is imperative. A strong military is imperative. And then obviously a trickle down effect is not letting, I mean, having John Deere, which to me is like one of the backbone companies of America,
Yes.
like letting like factories close down for cheap labor to Mexico, like that should be a crime. We need to keep jobs, obviously, here in America. And obviously, a lot of these oil-producing nations that we used to have deals with, I mean, even Saudi Arabia just kicked us to the curb and walked away
Yes.
from a 30-year deal. I mean, you know, here in California, gas is $6 a gallon. I just came back from Florida yesterday, where it's $3 a gallon. I noticed Denver, Colorado was $2 a gallon. I mean, a lot of people are working two jobs, or you know, they're not making enough ends meet where they have to carry on working. So I just think, you know, in terms of consumer goods and prices and foods and services, you know, there's a lot of fat cats out there taking advantages of the working class, and I think that really needs to change. Obviously, this U.S. national debt, like you said, we're taking on water; it's a sinking ship. You know, how do we fix that? Maybe we go back to a gold standard. Maybe we need to be pegged back to have some type of fiscal responsibility. If you gave a child a credit card and you never taught them the worth of a dollar, they would go out there and spend. And what would happen if you got that big credit card bill as a parent? You'd say, Jimmy, no more, we're cutting you off. So I think there's a bit of fiscal responsibility and accountability that kind of needs to come back to this, you know, great nation, because there's a lot of people that are putting the money in their pockets, and it's not going to the people of this country. So I think, you know, it's like a cruise ship. If you've ever seen a big cruise ship turn around, you probably haven't, but imagine a cruise ship in your mind. It takes a long time for a cruise ship to do a 360. And I think that's what we're looking at as an economy, as a nation. And there's a lot of things that are going to go wrong before they can go right. And I think that's what we're going to experience. And it's kind of a prudent man that foresees danger and prepares. I always tell people we don't have a crystal ball, but we have a really good roadmap, and we know what that roadmap looks like. So, you know, gold and silver, not necessarily the magic pill that's going to cure everything in this nation, but it sure is going to cure you from heading off a fiscal cliff and protecting your IRA and 401k that you've worked all your life for, that you want to protect. You know, that's I think something that should be way up on people's priorities list. And that's why I talk about getting an education, getting an understanding, getting the free gold guides, and kind of taking that first step on knowing what your options are.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's all about safeguarding what you've worked your whole life for. And you know, to me,
Yeah.
it's something that people, it's not an option. You've got to do it. You've got to safeguard your wealth, especially people who, like my dad, who worked 35 plus years, worked his butt off his whole life, only to see his 401k and things like that dwindle in value because politicians on both sides of the aisle have been irresponsible. And to me, it's like, it's legacy type stuff. And now that my father and my mother are both retired, hey, like that life happens pretty fast, like Ferris Bueller. If you don't take a stop to look around every once in a while, you can miss it. And now all of a sudden they're retired, and this stuff really matters to them. So this is why Genesis Gold Group is important, and this is why safeguarding your wealth is so important. So Jonathan, before we leave for the day, tell us again how we can support Genesis Gold Group and where we can find you.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you having me on to talk about these crucial things that we need to discuss. But I'm trying to see if my camera, there we go, there it is. This is the Prepper Bar, folks. Comes in gold, comes in silver. And if you would like to know more about these, you can go to prepperbar.com. Use promo code PREPPER on checkout. You'll get a great discount there. And if you want to learn how to place, you know, coins, bars, even Prepper bars in an IRA, you can go to genesisgoldgroup.com. We have a free definitive gold guide. Just put it in. You'll be able to reserve your seat with my monthly seminar that I do with Mike Lindell, who's also doing a great job trying to protect this nation. And again, it's about an education. Be proactive, not reactive. And we're so happy that we can support your show, Sean, and everything that you're doing out there. And you know, you're asking some really great questions to me today. And I love any curveball that people can throw at me, because you know, I've been doing this for a long time. Like I said, Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, HSBC, AIG. I've consulted for some of the biggest banks out there, and with my understanding of the markets and being around some of the top traders out there, Today is just such a scary scenario, and people don't realize that you just can't be like an ostrich and bury your head in the sand. We have a little saying in the gold industry that you don't wait to buy gold, you buy gold and wait. And that's referring to all the economic calamities that you could be facing. So I think today it's very imperative to kind of get that education, get that understanding, and realize that, hey, I've worked all my life for this IRA or 401k. I can protect it. I don't have to leave it at risk in the market. And by putting it into physical metals, I'm protecting my legacy. I can pass these assets down to family members, and that's something people often do as well. So again, genesisgoldgroup.com, and people can learn more from there.
Yeah, thank you, my friend Jonathan. We got to do this again sometime where I can throw you some more curveballs. Really put you on the economic, hot seat. Help you get us to solve some of the problems that we have in the world, my friend. Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate you coming on.
Pleasure. God bless.
All right, God bless. Take care. Okay, that's Jonathan Rose, CEO of Genesis Gold Group. Look, folks, I wanted to introduce you to him because you got to understand where Jonathan's coming from. It's very important to understand when you're making a decision as to whether or not to do business with somebody. First of all, talking about people who are safeguarding and looking after independent content creators and making what I do possible on this show. Got to showcase those people because in today's day and age, it takes courage to do it. Where we cancel culture and like people with all these crazy boycotts and going after companies. We need people like Jonathan Rose and Genesis Gold Group, people who have a backbone to look after folks like us. And another thing I knew you would all appreciate about Jonathan is that, you hear him talk about, fat cats hoarding all of the wealth. I mean, protecting the middle class and protecting, the American worker is something that is of paramount importance to me. And you heard Jonathan talk about, John Deere offshoring even some of their manufacturing capability to Mexico. The problem with that is that people who work in the manufacturing industry, those are legacy jobs. Their father and grandfather did that job before they did. And when you offshore a company like that, you're offshoring legacies. And Jonathan is a guy that truly understands that here in America, we don't just live in an economy. We live in a country. And it's part of, not only the business communities and business leaders, it's part of their responsibility, but more the responsibility of our political leaders to make sure we're looking after the American workers who built this country into what we enjoy today. So that's why I'm doing this. It's, when I talk to you about Genesis Gold, when I talk to you about prepper bars, I mean, you hear that stuff on the show and you turn on your television and you watch commercials and stuff, but I really want you to get a sense of who these patriots are that are taking a risk for me and shows like Battleground Live and shows just like mine. So thank you for joining me on this special Saturday episode of Battleground Live. We're going to do more of this in the future because you got to know who these people are. They're patriots and they deserve all the recognition in the world. So thank you all for watching. God bless you all, and God bless this amazing country that we call home. Take care. See you later.
Mike Lindell here, and like you, I see our country being destroyed daily. We face massive economic issues, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, there are people in power who threaten the values that